You weren't born good. You were trained. They told you if you sat still, smiled politely, followed rules, and kept your voice down, you'd be safe. You'd be accepted. You'd be loved. And it worked, didn't it? You got the praise, the tick on the chart, the gold star, the quiet nod of approval that said, yes, you're one of the good ones. But here's the problem. Being good is a performance. And performances are exhausting. Every time you edit your truth to be more palatable, you kill off a part of yourself. Every time you suppress your anger, your needs, your instincts, you hand your power to the system that benefits from your obedience. This isn't morality, it's submission. It's psychological wage slavery disguised as virtue. And the brain, clever little organ that it is, wires you to enjoy that submission. It starts early. Childhood reward circuits flood with dopamine every time you do the right thing. You're chemically rewarded not for being true, but for being tame. Not for thinking, but for complying. Fast forward 20 years, and you're still chasing that same high. You say yes when you want to scream no. You overextend, overdeliver, overplease. You feel noble for putting yourself last, but under the surface there's friction, resentment, exhaustion, a quiet scream behind your eyes that says, "This isn't who I am." Carl Jung would call this the betrayal of the self, the persona masking the shadow. You've been so well rehearsed at being good, you've forgotten how to be whole. And now you don't even know what your instincts sound like anymore. You've been obedient for so long, you mistake compliance for character. Let me ask you something brutal. If your goodness disappeared tomorrow, who the hell would you be? And would that person be worse or finally real? They didn't ask you to be good. They trained you to be, not through love, through leverage. First it was fear, the sharp tone of a parent, the teacher's raised eyebrow, the looming threat of punishment. Your nervous system learnt fast, compliance keeps the peace. Later it became pressure. Do well in school or you'll disappoint us. Make the team, get the grade, make us proud. Then it became performance. Smile wider, be polite, don't challenge authority. Play your role so well they forget to ask who you actually are. This wasn't a conscious choice. It was 1,000 micro-adjustments you made to survive. Neuroscientists call this neuroplastic conditioning. Your brain literally rewired itself to reduce conflict, avoid rejection, and increase belonging. You became fluent in the language of suppression. You weren't taught to think. You were taught to adapt. And if you tried to rebel, you weren't just punished, you were shamed. Shame is the ultimate obedience tool. It doesn't just say, you did something bad. It whispers, you are bad. So you overcorrected. You became more helpful, more agreeable, more self-sacrificing. You apologized for taking up space. You learned that saying yes made you valuable, even when everything in you screamed no. You called it kindness. They called it maturity, but it was really emotional self-erasure. And here's where it gets more sinister. You started training others too. You praised them for their politeness. You rewarded conformity. You bristled when someone spoke their truth without editing it for comfort. Because that part of you, the raw, real, unapologetic part, had been locked in the basement. You didn't kill it. You just gagged it and called that being nice. This is how systemic obedience self-replicates. It doesn't need tyrants. It just needs people afraid of not being good. And here's the truth nobody says out loud. You were never rewarded for being good. You were rewarded for being predictable. Goodness, as you were taught it, was just a convenient disguise for control. Being good has a price, and the receipt shows up in your nervous system. The tension in your jaw when you say yes but mean no. The backache from carrying burdens that weren't yours to hold. The fatigue that doesn't go away with rest, because it isn't physical, it's existential. That's the slow rot of self-betrayal. You start each day trying to keep the peace, but by nightfall, you're seething at the life you've quietly built around everyone else's comfort. And still, you tell yourself, I'm doing the right thing. But what if the right thing is what's breaking you? You work harder than you should. You give more than you get. You manage people, problems, emotions that aren't even yours, and you're rewarded for it with silence, with expectation, with more of the same. You don't get thanked for being good. You get used. And worse, you start using yourself. You become the enforcer of your own oppression, micromanaging, over-planning, filling your calendar with obligations so no one can accuse you of slacking, failing, being selfish. You wear your productivity like armor, but inside, you feel empty, detached, like a ghost with a to-do list. You catch yourself resenting the very people you've trained to depend on you. You start fantasizing about quitting, disappearing, burning it all down, not because you're ungrateful, because you're exhausted, but you don't burn it down. You light a scented candle and call it resilience. You take a walk, meditate, try to be grateful. You patch the leak with mindfulness, then go back to the same broken blueprint. This isn't living. It's role play. It's martyrdom dressed as maturity. And if you're honest, it's not just costing you peace. It's costing you identity, because somewhere in the routine of being good, you forgot what you actually want. And if you can't answer that, you're not free. You're just well behaved. Daniel is a good man, polite, reliable, the kind of bloke who never misses a deadline, never rocks the boat, and always knows the right thing to say in staff meetings. He manages a team, pays his taxes, remembers birthdays, smiles when he doesn't feel like it. He's the kind of man people trust, but not the kind they know. Because Daniel learnt early that goodness is protection. His father yelled. His teachers judged. His managers punished. So he adapted. He stopped asking questions. He stopped saying what he wanted. He became what was needed. Efficient, agreeable, harmless. Now he runs a department where everyone gets on with it. There's no innovation, no chaos, just quiet compliance. But behind his tidy spreadsheets and polite tone, Daniel is furious, not at his staff, at himself. Because every time they wait for him to give them permission, every time they do the bare minimum and expect him to fix the fallout, every time they smile through gritted teeth just like he does, he sees it. The system he hates, replicated through him. He resents being their babysitter, but he trained them to need it. He resents being overworked, but he built the machine that won't run without him. He resents his own lack of freedom, but he punishes anyone who dares take theirs. He doesn't scream. He doesn't snap. He just closes the door at the end of the day, sits in his car, and stares through the windscreen for 15 minutes, like he's trying to remember something important. Something like who he is, what he wants, why he's here. But the answers don't come. Because Daniel hasn't been asked what he wants in over a decade. Not by anyone, not even by himself. Because Daniel is a good man, and good men don't want, they serve, they sacrifice, they survive. Until one day they don't. It starts with a flicker, a sentence you're not supposed to think. I don't want to do this anymore. Not just the job, not just the errands, the niceties, the calendar full of obligations. You mean the performance itself, the pretending, the smiling, the relentless self-erasure dressed up as being dependable. You realize you're not tired because life is hard. You're tired because you've been performing a character called good your whole life, and it's killing your spirit. The friction becomes unbearable. You wake up already braced for the day. You crave silence, solitude, authenticity, but your life is a theatre production, and the curtains never close. You start to notice things. How often you apologize for no reason. How you soften your truth so no one feels uncomfortable. How your body tenses when someone asks what you want, because you honestly don't know. The version of you that existed before the rules, before the conditioning, before the loyalty to other people's comfort, that version is clawing at the inside of your ribs, begging to be let out. You were promised that being good would keep you safe. But now you see it. It just made you invisible. You've spent so long contorting yourself to be liked, accepted, approved of, that you've become allergic to your own truth. And here's the raw part. You start to suspect that if you were ever fully, unapologetically yourself, some people in your life wouldn't love you anymore. Maybe they never did. Maybe they loved the version of you who didn't take up space, who didn't ask for more, who smiled and agreed and kept everything smooth. And that's when the question hits you like a punch. Is it really love if you have to perform to keep it? That's not awakening. That's detonation. Because once you see it, you can't unsee it. And once the mask slips, you can't put it back on without bleeding. Let's break this down properly. Carl Jung called it the persona, the mask you wear to survive in society. It's not fake, it's just incomplete. The danger comes when you confuse the mask with the self. You don't just act nice, you believe you are only good if you're acting nice. But behind the persona lives the shadow, everything you suppress to keep the peace. Anger, desire, ambition, autonomy, these aren't flaws, they're fuel. And the more you exile them, the more fragmented you become. You start to lose access to instinct, to energy, to truth. You become tired, indecisive, emotionally flat. Because wholeness requires integration, and you can't integrate what you refuse to acknowledge. Now, layer in Alfred Adler. Adler believed our behaviors are driven by social belonging. We adapt to avoid inferiority. If being good is what earns you inclusion, your entire identity wraps around it, even if it suffocates you. You don't say, I'm exhausted. You say, I'm just trying to be a better person. But underneath that virtuous disguise is fear. Fear of rejection. Fear of being seen as selfish. Fear that your needs make you unlovable. Now bring in the neuroscience. Every time you obey instead of object. Every time you people please instead of protect your energy, your brain gets a reward. Tiny dopamine hits from approval, praise, avoidance of conflict. You're chemically trained to feel good about betraying yourself. Over time, the brain remaps. The executive function, which helps you make decisions and self-direct, gets hijacked by learned helplessness. You stop trusting your inner cues. You outsource everything to rules, roles, and routines. That's why you freeze when asked, "What do you want?" Because want is dangerous in systems built on obedience. Want makes you inconvenient. Want makes you unpredictable. Want makes you real. But here's the radical truth the system hopes you never discover. You can't be free and obedient at the same time. You can't be authentic and universally approved. You can't be whole and only good. So the question isn't, how do I become a better person? The real question is, how do I become more whole, even if it means being less good? Let's get brutally clear. You don't owe anyone a watered-down version of yourself. You don't exist to be agreeable, digestible, or easy to work with. You're not here to keep everyone else comfortable while you quietly decay. So here's what it looks like to stop being good and start being real. Start saying no, like it's holy. Not rude, not aggressive, sacred. Every no you speak is a yes to your truth. If people get angry, let them. That's their tantrum, not your burden. Delete the word should from your internal dialogue. I should be more patient. I should just let it go. No, you could. But should? That's shame in disguise. Audit your day for obedience. Look at everything you said yes to out of habit. The email you didn't want to write. The meeting you didn't need to attend. The social favor you agreed to with a tight jaw. Ask yourself, did I choose this or did I comply? Practice disappointing people. Let someone be mildly annoyed at you. Don't explain, don't fix, don't over-apologize. Let their discomfort teach them something for once. Redefine selfishness. Let's be clear, selfishness isn't taking more than your share. It's refusing to abandon yourself to make others feel secure. It's not cruelty, it's clarity. If you need a new word for it, call it soul loyalty, because that's what this is. And if someone tries to guilt trip you for choosing yourself, smile and say, I trust that you can handle your own feelings. I won't manage them for you. That's not cold, that's adulthood. This isn't about becoming reckless or cruel. It's about remembering that your job on this earth isn't to be nice, it's to be whole, honest, real. So when that old voice whispers, but what will people think? You can answer, they'll think I finally stopped performing. And they'd be right. You won't look polished when you stop trying to be good. You'll look wild. You'll sound blunt. You'll take up space in ways that make other people twitch, but you'll be free. You'll walk away from conversations without tying them in a neat bow. You'll let people misunderstand you, and you won't chase them to explain. You'll stop apologizing for existing in full color, and here's the surprise, you won't become monstrous. You'll become magnetic. Because when someone finally owns their truth without performing it, the world leans in. Not because they're nice, but because they're real. That's what this journey was always about. Not rebellion for rebellion's sake, not cruelty, not chaos, but clarity. You're not here to be everyone's favorite. You're here to be someone you can live with at night when the noise stops. You're not here to be reliable in the system. You're here to be responsible to your soul. That means you'll lose some things. Approval, comfort, people who liked the palatable version of you. But what do you gain? Autonomy, self-respect, a quiet, unshakable peace that says, I don't belong to the world. I belong to myself. That's not selfish, that's sacred. And if it makes you look less good in their eyes, then good. Let them see it.